Okay guys, this is Michael out in Salt Lake City and thought I'd give you a quick glimpse of the chassis that is now pretty much complete. I have some cleaning to do on it still, just a little bit. I have to put the dial pointer back on, but the dial string is on. Both tone controls, there's one tone control on each side of the dial on this radio. Both tone controls have been rewired, and a new shielding jacket has been put on both of them. And all the switches have been cleaned and taken care of, including the record player switch. This radio uses a pretty unusual way of turning the record player on and off, and that is this little linkage here that connects to the record player switch, which is just a simple sliding switch. And it works like so. Piece of cake, nothing to it. And let's take a look at the back side of this. I cleaned it up as best I could without going crazy. This is a nice solid radio that the owner wants to use regularly. So my aim on this radio is to make it reliable, clean, and work and sound the best I can without just being crazy about every single little authentic detail. I remember talking to this customer, and they want to use this one, and they want it to be a good solid worker. So here we go. Let's take a look underneath here. I am going to stop the camera for a second, and then I'll show you the bottom side. Okay, here we go. Here's the bottom of that Zenith. The thing I love about Zeniths, this vintage and this style, and it's true of the big chassis Zeniths too, is you can set it up on the transformer on one end, and so you can get a nice working angle to get to most of the radio. And then when the dial faces off, you can you can stand it on a side too, and it'll stand nicely for you. So there we go. As I pointed out earlier, these chassis are a real rat's nest of wires and components. So it took some real work to get this thing squared away. Let's see if I can get in a little closer. A lot of new wires, It had the crumbling insulation syndrome in a very bad way. There is the CL90 thermistor, and there is the safety capacitor right down there coming off of the line. There's your fuse right here. Okay, so there's the fuse, the backside of the barrel fuse. There is the thermistor right there, and that blue disc down there is the safety capacitor. It's a Y2 safety capacitor. The only capacitors that I left in there really were a few of the mica capacitors, the little domino looking things. Otherwise I replaced them all. There were some wire wound resistors in there. There's one right there. This, boy, it's hard to do when you're looking at the camera. There's a wire wound resistor, and that's a 420 ohm. There's another one right up there. There are a few of those in there. I didn't restuff the can. In fact, the can was pretty mangled and it wasn't really reusable. But I like to put capacitors on the underside of the chassis if I can fit them, because it makes it easier to service later. And I'm not convinced that restuffing does anything to preserve historical value, because then you're actually removing original components, and I don't like to do that. But there you go. Just about every single resistor was replaced. There were quite a few dog bones in there, and then there were some carbon resistors in there too that might have been replaced by some previous service. But you get an idea what it was like to work on this thing. Some wires do not make sense to go tearing into things to replace them. So there's a couple of approaches I take, and let me see if I can find one here. Sometimes I'll sleeve wires. If I'm going down into, there it is, there's a red wire going down into the first IF can. To take that IF can apart when it's functioning and working, and to horse around with it is just asking for trouble. And so what I do is I remove one end of the wire way down here, and then I take a piece of shrink tubing sleeve, and I sleeve that wire. It's got a very high insulation value, and I sleeve the wire all the way down as far as it will go while I gently move it. I don't want to shove it. And then I shrink it and reattach the wire, and that IF can that wire is just as well protected as if it were new wire. And that's one approach. Sometimes it doesn't even make sense to do that, but I've got a wire maybe that isn't anywhere near anything, and I don't want to really tear things up to get to, like that green knotted wire there. That's got some cracks right at the knot, but it's not going to short to anything. So I'll give it a good lacquer coating that provides some good insulation value, and then I leave it in place. I'm not going to mess with it much. I didn't see the point of risking damaging that switch by heating it and pulling that wire out and doing all sorts of work. So it made sense to me just to lacquer that wire. There's no risk of short there, and there's no risk of messing anything up. You know, guys, you got to be careful with these coils, these transformers, these antenna coils, oscillator coils, and so forth. Because, yeah, you can repair them, but it ain't easy, buddy. And it's best just to not get in that situation if you can help it. Now, I understand if you're doing a 20s radio and you want everything to look perfect, you might do that. But we're talking about a workhorse radio here, 1940s radio, that this guy wants to use and make his radio that he can use every day. And so then you have to think about it in terms of, okay, is this going to present a hazard? If not, does it really alter the general appearance of the radio? If not, well then, okay, it's a safe way to do it. That's a smart thing to do. So there you have it. That's a look at the chassis for this 1942 ZENITH 7S682. And I'm going to do a little more work on it to clean it up a little bit, remove some of this writing and so forth. And then I'm going to get to work on the wave magnet antenna, which is just mangled to heck. All right, guys, that's it for now.